and let's attack the offense. And Tim Lester is the OC. Pretty impressive track record. And of course, that's going to be the main focus. And we will get to the quarterback situation. Those go hand in hand, of course, in regards to what people are going to be talking about and what you're going to be writing about, I would think, here in August.
Yeah, this is the part of the year where everything's positive for everybody, right? Like let's just lay that as the baseline. But we have continually heard positive things about Tim Lester, whether it's about the X's and O's, whether it's about how he's relating to players, whether it's from recruits, because we've heard some recruits talking very, very positively about Tim Lester, saying he's the reason I'm committing to Iowa. I believe in what he's doing, even though they have this horrid track record of offense. And so, I mean, it's hard not to be positive right now, given the time of the year it is, given how folks are talking about him. He's a former quarterback coaching the quarterbacks. What a freaking concept, right? And that is so big and so pivotal in the direction that Iowa wants to go and could go offensively, and just like do the bare minimum and you'll be better. Like top 100 offense is a success this coming year. Seriously, that's a huge success. If they had that last year, they probably don't get shut out in those 3 games. They maybe even compete in some of them. And so obviously that's contingent on Cade being healthy too, right? Like, and Eric All and Luke Lachey, right? And the offensive line. So much of that is a big part of it. But for now, it's positive. People are excited. At the same time, it's believe it when I see it. Not getting I'm not getting my hopes up that I'm going to enjoy watching Iowa's offense this year as a media member. I am very much believe it when I see it. And truth be told, it's the same thing for Cade McNamara's health. It's a lot of positivity. People are saying around the program that he's running around like normal. At the same time, like if you're Iowa's defense come Kids Day, you don't want to be the guy that maybe inadvertently pops Cade a little bit too hard. You don't want to be that guy. So that's on the mind, I think, of folks around the Iowa program.
So, Elliot, you're referencing Cade McNamara as the presumed starter. I'm going to put up the signal for one Brendan Sullivan here. He's thrown 200 passes as a Big Ten quarterback, and he's completed 69% of his passes. The last time an Iowa quarterback completed 60% of his passes was in 2015. So if he's the guy, either one of them just makes the simple throw, their offense is going to be upgraded significantly.
Yeah. And, I talk of Cade as a presumed starter because that's what Kirk Ferentz does. And when Kirk Ferentz makes up his mind, it's going to be that way, right? Like if there's anything to determine from Kirk's tenure in Iowa City, it's that. But at the same time, I think they need to give Brendan Sullivan every opportunity to win that job too. I mean, I think that completion percentage is a byproduct of what they were doing at Northwestern. And that's also why Tim Lester brought him in, is because I imagine they're going to do not exactly the same thing, but some of the similar things of finding the right guy to complete the ball to, making the correct throw, letting the players make a play. Right. That's what he did at Western Michigan with guys like Sky Moore, right? Like it's possession receivers. It's get him the ball, get him in space, let him make a play. And so I think that given that Cade has been hurt so consistently, given that Brendan has had some success at the college level, and now he's going to be playing on like an actual Power 4 football team, you give him that opportunity. And I think that between those two, Iowa's offense should be okay. I mean, well, maybe not okay, but better than what it was. And once you get past those two, it becomes a little wishy-washy. But I think you give Brendan Sullivan every opportunity to compete with Cade McNamara, especially in fall camp.
Elliot, is the offensive line just a matter of improvement and trying to reclaim the status of Iowa offensive lines, or are there a lot of decisions to be made about who goes where and who wins jobs?
I don't know that there's a lot of decisions to be made, because when you look at the offensive line and the personnel and who's been where, who's done what, Mason Richmond's left tackle, Logan Jones is center, Connor Colby's more than likely right guard, and then Jennings Dunkers at right tackle. The question mark is that left guard spot. Do you go with Tyler Ellsbury, who was good behind Logan Jones when he went down last year? Do you go with Nick DeYoung, who's been around for a while but hasn't been all that good? Do you go with a young guy like Cade Piper, who folks were excited about last year? Does Trevor Lauk make a jump? I mean, he was a 4-star recruit in that 23 class. So that's that spot that I think is the biggest question mark. Last year, it was between Nick DeYoung and Rusty Feth. Rusty Feth ended up taking that spot and holding it down. But yeah, I do think it's just about continuing to take that step forward. And how much does this offense help the offensive line out too? How much does Tim Lester's offense help out what they want to do, how they execute? Play calling, I think, is very big in that regard too. The health of the running backs is big. Ultimately, I do think it's just about taking that step forward. Last offseason, Kirk Ferentz told us about the maturity of the offensive line and how they've all grown. And you bring a lot of those guys back. Now, are we talking about maturity off the field? And is that expectation to translate that to on the field? Like, is it just about really honing in the fundamentals and not getting beat? Like, to that end, it's just about improvement and making that step forward for this offensive line. And then who holds down that left guard spot? I think that left guard spot is probably the biggest question in terms of personnel and who's going to fill it, because they have probably 8 guys who could start on this offensive line this coming year. And maybe we see that. I mean, they've dealt with some injuries over however many these last however many years. And yeah, I don't necessarily think it's personnel other than that left guard spot.
Now, the wide receivers are being rated by any publication that you get a hold of as the worst in the Big Ten. They've got the 18 next to their name, and it's justified. But of course, that goes hand in hand with quarterback play. And Caleb Brown is the guy that is looked upon as the guy with the highest ceiling. And of course, he's been making his plays off the field recently. So we'll see how that transitions and how that's dealt with. But is there any hope for this wide receiver core to be better or land some guys that can be reliable?
Well, there are a couple things. Like Caleb Brown headlines this group, right? He's probably not going to be playing in that first game, maybe not the second game of the year, depending on how Iowa handles that off the field situation. But he headlines the group. Former 4-star, played at Ohio State, playmaker. Like that dude is a guy who could succeed in Tim Lester's offense. But then you look at who's behind him now to start the season, and it's Jacob Gill and Caden Weegan and Terrell Washington Jr., who was part of that 23 class. Jacob Gill, a transfer along with Brendan Sullivan from Northwestern. Caden Weegan, a walk-on. When you go past that, and it's Dayton Howard and Jarriett Bowie, who were part of that 23 class. Jarriett Bowie saw the field last year. I don't think he didn't register to catch, to tell you that, to get that right. Dayton Howard, I don't think he had any other offers besides Iowa out of high school, but then he's kind of continued to grow and fill out. Those are going to be your X guys. I don't think Reese Vanderzee sees the field as a freshman this year in that 24 class. KJ Parker very well could. I'm a believer in KJ Parker. I think he's probably one of the more under-recruited players in this class. He was originally recruited at Iowa as a safety, and then they saw what he was actually capable of on the offensive side of the field. Like, what are we doing? He's a wide receiver. Had offers from Iowa State, Wisconsin, I think Cincinnati, and maybe Western Michigan was a player there towards the end of his recruitment as well. But I like KJ Parker a lot. He's a freshman that could come in and contribute. Alex Moda is a guy we haven't seen a lot of. He was in that 23 class. I think he was hurt a good part of spring. And then you can't forget Seth Anderson. Seth Anderson was pretty productive at the beginning of the season. Then Deacon Hill gets hurt and he can't catch these missiles of passes. Like, fine. Okay. So that's kind of a rundown of where they're at with guys who could see the field. As you go forward into this season, it's bodies, right? Like at the end of the day, bringing in a guy like Jacob Gill, though he might not have been able to crack the depth chart at Northwestern, like, again, it's a body. It's a guy who has some experience at the Big Ten level. And if you do believe in this Tim Lester offense to just get the ball in the guy's hands and let him make a play, Jacob Gill, like, that's okay. Bringing him in, and you don't expect him to light the world on fire, but he's got speed. I mean, he can run routes. He's a sharp route runner. He's a slot receiver. Washington, TJ Washington, is a guy who played just about every position you possibly could in high school. He's moving over from running back to wide receiver. He could make some plays this year. Ultimately, it all starts and ends with Caleb Brown, though, and getting the ball in his hands and letting him make a play, because he is a playmaker. In the future, with this position, I really think you just have to go to the portal. You just have to, because with where they're at, I mean, Terrence Smith was the only wide receiver on the big official visit weekend. The only one. I don't know if they can go out and get another wide receiver that's worth a scholarship at this rate if Smith commits to Minnesota or Purdue or somewhere else. I don't know how you do that. I think your best options are to dip into the FCS and say, look what we have to offer, or to another program like Northwestern, where it's like, oh, you're not getting playing time, but you could here. And you have guys like Jacob Gill that become fundamental, integral parts of the offense, and they make plays because of the way Tim Lester does things and sets things up. And then you can say, oh, we took these guys and did this, and they had success. You can't do that right now. You're hoping they believe in the message of John Budmeyer and Tim Lester. But then you look at guys like Raylan Sharp, who chose Fresno State over Iowa. And it's not there yet. You have to convince you have to put it on the field. You have to. But now going forward, I think they've got to rely on the portal.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, Elliot, I got to run. I'm going to cut and close right here, and maybe we can have you back, talk some defense in the next week or so.
Sure.
That works. Okay. Elliot Clough, the Rivals site there, of course, with Iowa Athletics. Hawkeye Beacon, you can catch Elliot on a regular basis right there. Elliot, as always, appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.